You're listening to A State of the Union, estate planning made simple. Here's your host, Brad Wewell, from Texas Trust Law in Austin, Texas.
Hi, this is Brad Wewell with the State of the Union. This is a podcast sponsored by Texas Trust Law, estate planning law firm here in Austin, Texas. We do wills, trust, probate, special needs, asset protection, everything to do with the estate planning world except litigation. We don't fight. We're happy lawyers and help families do things that they want to get done with a good experience and great expertise. We are here today, and this is going to be one of my favorite programs. We're here today with Keisha Jones, and Keisha is the Director of Inpatient Services at Hospice Austin.
Correct.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Good, good, good. Keisha told me that we have to keep this podcast short, 30 minutes or so, because she has a vow renewal tomorrow.
Absolutely.
How about that? How cool is that? Well, lucky guy. Leave it at that.
I'm the lucky one.
All right. I like that too. All right. What we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to start at the beginning. And we're going to start with what hospice is. Now, I know a little bit about what hospice is, but I probably don't know much more than you know about hospice. And so Keisha knows everything about hospice. So we're going to start with that, and then we're going to get into what Hospice Austin does, and then we're going to get into what Keisha's role at hospice is, and this thing called Christopher House, which is unique to Hospice Austin. Very important, and you want to hear this too. So we're going to be done about probably from this point 28 minutes. Let's get started. So Keisha, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah.
What is hospice? People hear different things. Somebody's going to hospice, blah, blah, blah. What is it?
Yeah, so in order for a patient to qualify for hospice, they have to have a life-limiting illness or a terminal diagnosis to qualify for hospice.
Okay.
And to be on hospice, we think that the trajectory of your disease is going to decline, and it has to be 6 months or less time frame.
You're going to be dead in 6 months or less.
Yeah.
That's kind of the presumption.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's say I don't.
That's okay. If you don't,
It's kind of okay.
we continue to care for you. Sometimes
Okay.
with good medical management oversight care, people live longer than 6 months.
Sure.
And some patients just may qualify for our palliative care program versus hospice, but we don't kick you off because you're not dying yet. What we do is we make sure you're in the right place with the right people.
Okay, let's go to another word you used.
Yes.
Big word, palliative care. Now, we've all heard that too. I think that means pain management, but what does it mean?
Yeah, so the difference between hospice and palliative care is that palliative care is based on prognosis, and hospice care is based on diagnosis. So if you have a life-limiting illness and we think you're going to live probably about 2 years, palliative care is the best place for you because you don't need all the things that hospice offers, like social work and CNA care and frequent nursing visits.
CNA?
Certified nursing assistant.
Okay,
care.
got it, sure. Okay, all right. So palliative care, I'm sick, probably not going to make it more than 2 years. You're going to come in and help me again with medication management and things like that?
I view palliative care as an umbrella. You could still keep your oncologist, your nephrologist, you could still have chemo treatments and be on dialysis, but they help oversee the medication and help bridge that gap between your diagnosis and hospice care when you're ready.
Okay.
And so they help support that.
Okay, now I'm ready. All right, I got a diagnosis. I'm going to be gone in 6 months.
Yes.
What do y'all do?
So we help aid in comfort, right? We don't do anything to slow down the progression of the disease,
Sure,
and we don't do anything to speed it up, which
Right.
is a misconception.
Okay, so sometimes people think you're there to kind of almost a semi euthanasia,
Yeah.
which you can't do in Texas.
That's right. We don't do.
Okay, all right. So you come in, I heard the word social work. Tell me about
Yes.
that too.
So we have a lot of patients that have a lot of psychosocial needs. Sometimes the pain that people are feeling at end of life isn't necessarily based on their disease.
Huh.
Sometimes it's needing to make connections before they leave, tying up some loose ends.
I'll be darned.
So our social work and chaplains help with those things.
I'll be darned. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you can come in, and if I'm estranged from somebody or I want to make things right,
Yes,
then hospice and your team can help me do that.
absolutely.
Guide me in that.
Yep.
Wow, that's interesting. All right, because that's what we see here a lot. We see people, some, who have strained relationships with their family, and particularly kids, but sometimes it's siblings. And yeah, I kind of want to leave the planet in good stead.
Absolutely.
Huh,
Yeah.
that's really nice. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, good. That'll be helpful.
Yes.
All right. So now I'm in the situation where I am your patient. You'll come into my home. Do I go to the hospital? Am I in a nursing home? What setting am I
Yeah,
in?
so it really depends on where you are in your disease progression.
Okay.
So most people ideally would like to be able to die at home in peace with their families. So we have a huge support system that can support families at home taking care of their loved one. Sometimes, though, home conditions are not conducive to the dying process.
Yes.
So then a nursing facility may be helpful, or
Okay.
assisted living facility may be helpful.
Okay.
But in those times when patients are struggling with their pain and you can't get the pain under control, then places like my place, Christopher House, is a resource for people to go to have 24/7 nursing care.
Okay. So again, I've got this diagnosis. I want to be cured from my home if I can. Do y'all bring people into my home? How does that?
Yes. So what we'll do is when someone is referred to us, our whole team goes out and meets the patient and their family. So our team is consisted of a provider, whether it be a physician or a nurse practitioner,
Okay.
the nurse, the social worker, the certified nursing assistant, and even volunteers. We have volunteers that'll go out and sit, run little errands, read books, play music. We have a lot of different resources for our volunteer
So
department.
one of our listeners or viewers wanted to be a volunteer, they could.
They could, yep. We have a volunteer training for sure.
Okay, all right. And then, kind of a crass question, I guess, but I think people would want to know, how do y'all get paid?
So we're a nonprofit hospice.
And I think you're the only nonprofit.
We are the
hospital.
only nonprofit
It's
hospice,
important.
4-star only nonprofit hospice.
Okay.
Yes,
And so you take donations,
we do.
but the donations, I wouldn't think would be enough to cover the overhead over there. So my recollection is you can take Medicare payments, Medicaid payments.
We
how's
do.
that?
We take Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance.
Okay.
And then we also take on a non-funded population as well.
Non-funded population, those are folks who just can't pay.
Correct.
Okay. All
But
right.
with the community support, we're able to take care of those
Community
patients
support
with
mean donations.
correct.
All right. What's the website?
Hospiceaustin.org.
Y'all got that? Hospiceaustin.org. They can probably put a credit card on there.
Yes, absolutely.
We do have folks who have decided to include Hospice Austin in their estate plan.
Yes.
And Robin Clements is somebody over there we work with a lot. And so, yeah, if anybody has an interest in doing that, let us know. If you work with another attorney, let them know. You can actually call Robin and she'll help you get fixed up
Yes,
with
she
some things
will.
too. She's very good. She's quite the woman.
She's amazing.
All right.
No one like her.
Okay. Your role. What is your role in Hospice Austin?
So I'm the director of inpatient services, so
Okay.
I manage all of the nurses and staff there at Christopher House. I also oversee the admissions process for patients coming in Christopher House. So we have an admissions department, but we review all the patients that are coming over,
Okay.
making sure that they're a right fit. Not everybody that's dying can be at Christopher House.
All right, so let's start with what Christopher House is. Then we'll get into the admissions process, why some people can make the cut and some people can't,
Correct.
and all that. So let's go to
Yeah.
that. So what is Christopher House?
So Christopher House is a 14-bed inpatient facility
Okay.
that is there for patients who have symptoms that need to be managed.
Okay.
So it could be pain, agitation, not eating.
What about dementia, things like that?
Well, patients that have dementia aren't necessarily in a place where they have a need. Sometimes patients with dementia just have altered mental status, and so they
Altered-
don't altered mental status.
Oh, altered mental status.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So they don't always need oversight care from a nurse. They just need good loving and support from family.
Okay.
But patients that are in a crisis that causes them some delirium, so the pain is so out of control that it causes their delirium, agitation,
Right.
those kind of things.
Hard people to deal with.
Yeah.
They go to Christopher House.
They come
Okay.
to Christopher House.
Where is it?
It's on MLK between Airport Boulevard and I-35.
Okay. Yeah, you've been there a long time.
Yes, I
Did y'all
have.
just build a new facility?
We have not yet, but it's in the works.
All right,
so.
let's get going.
Yes.
Send that money in. Okay. Because
Absolutely.
I think I know where it is. It's there
Yes.
on the kind of the north side of MLK there.
Yes.
Okay. So what do y'all do there? So somebody's admitted there. Back up. How do you get admitted there?
So usually by referral, whether it be a physician referral, a case managers from the hospital.
Okay. Social
Friend to
worker.
friend referral.
So
I have a friend, a
lay
neighbor.
person could send somebody over.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then tell me about how you screen them and.
So we make sure that, number one, that their disease progression has progressed to where there's no other treatment, that they've elected not to have aggressive treatment.
Okay.
And then we look at, do they have a need for nursing care during that time? What can we do to help manage those symptoms?
Okay. All right. And that's managing the symptoms primarily, I would think at that point, would be more pain management.
It could be pain management. It could be more of a safe environment. It could be more of a relaxing environment. Sometimes home is not conducive to the dying process.
No, because you got other people there as a
Yeah.
rule. And if you're alone, then, you know, my mom was in a situation where she needed help and her strong desire was to be cared for at home, which I think is probably 98% of the people's strong desire. But her house couldn't do it. My mother was a pretty tough little gal and did not want anybody living in her house. You know, this is kind of my house. She was afraid people would steal things, whatever. Ultimately, we ended up in a facility. And then she died of COVID, so she didn't really need hospice. But so if we've got somebody, I mean, do they just call over there or really?
Yeah, so they can call our main number
The Hospice
that you
Austin
can find on the website.
Okay.
Yes, and they'll get directed to our admissions department.
Okay.
And our admissions department will take all that information. Our access specialists take all the intake information, and then they'll reach out to them and then call their doctors to get the official referral.
And then we get going.
And then we get going.
All right. Is there an out-of-pocket cost at Christopher House?
For the most part, no. There are patients who have private insurance and there are deductibles. There's
Okay.
nothing we can get around with that.
Sure, that's fine.
People
Sure.
have to pay those things.
Right.
But for the most part, we bill their insurance. Our billing department works out with the patients and families, and most patients are not left with that grief at the end of life with worrying about the financial part
Big
of
bill on top of losing a loved one, too.
Yes.
All right. So what does a day of a typical patient at Christopher House look like?
Yeah, so a lot of times there's a lot of beauty and grief in what we do at Christopher House
Okay.
because
Beauty and grief.
beauty and grief.
Huh, that's interesting. Okay.
Because patients will walk in, they're very afraid. They have heard throughout times that things are happening to them and they're changing and their loved ones. And this is not a topic that people like to talk about, is
Listen,
death and dying.
We never have a line outside our office of people clamoring to come in and do a will or a
That's
trust.
right.
That you'll never have to take a number
Yeah.
at this office to see somebody here because people don't want to talk about it, don't want to think about it. Right.
And I always say it's the only guarantee in our life. Not everybody's guaranteed to get married. Not everybody's
go.
guaranteed to have kids. And somebody said to me, taxes. I said, guess what? Everybody doesn't pay their taxes.
Hey, you're right about
So
that
the
too.
only guarantee
This
in
is
this
it.
life is dying.
What we tell people is
Yeah.
the mortality rate in Travis County, Williamson County, any county is 100%.
That's right. That's right.
Not getting out of here alone.
Yeah. So
Al-
usually
alive,
when
excuse me.
when patients walk in and they come to us, the first thing I say and my team says is, I wish your loved one wasn't dying. Right?
That's nice.
And that's normalizing that conversation.
Right.
A lot of times people are in complete shock, believe it or not. They say, what do you mean my mom is dying? No one said that. And it's because in the medical community, we use soft words like your mom is changing, things look different.
Probably
We're transitioning.
That's a big
Yes,
one now. It's a
very
new one
much
now,
so,
it seems
yes.
like, right?
Yes, and so that's a softer word to say. And so when you
Right.
tell someone that their loved one is dying, they're like, what do you mean?
Wow.
Yeah. So we usually have that upfront conversation. And so I have all of my team go in and meet the patient when they come. So they meet all the nurses,
Okay.
the CNAs, the social work, the chaplain, everybody. Even if they don't need those resources, we don't know what we need. They don't know what they need until we offer up those resources for them.
And the family would be there, especially
Family's
if you have a
there.
patient who is mentally impaired at that point or
Absolutely.
whatever, too.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So they're there, and I guess again, as death typically does, it's progressive, and then somebody ultimately does pass away.
Yeah. And the ironic thing that people don't know, a misconception, is about 25% of our patients don't die at Christopher House. They actually get to go home and be with their families and
All right,
die.
so tell me about that.
Yeah. So patients will come over to us in a crisis. They're having a symptom that isn't being managed with the current regimen they're on.
Right.
So with good oversight care and medical management, meaning being seen by the provider, getting good nursing care,
Training,
coming
maybe
up
the
with a plan.
family
Absolutely.
to do things differently.
Yes. Once they're stable and that crisis has subsided, doesn't mean that they're not still dying.
Sure.
Just means that we handle that crisis, and if they are able to go home, we want to get them
Get
home.
them in more
Mm-hmm.
comfortable, familiar
Or in a
environment.
facility, our social workers work really hard to get them in facilities that meet the need of the patient and the families.
I'll be darned. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great. How big is the Hospice Austin area?
Yeah. So as far as Christopher House or in general?
Both.
So Hospice Austin, we cover 5 counties.
Okay.
And so right now we have a patient census roughly between 280 and 330 is where we can run.
280 to 330 patients
patients.
actively on hospice in a county. This is Travis County, Williamson County. I would bet.
Caldwell, Hayes,
Blanco.
and Bastrop.
Okay. It's a lot of people.
Yes.
300 and some. Wow. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
That's a lot of work.
Yes.
But only 14 can get in the Christopher House.
Only 14 get in
Which is
Christopher House
why
because again,
we need to build a bigger house.
absolutely. But also too, even if we were having a bigger house, they have to have a nursing need to be able to be in the.
Okay, just
facility.
because I'm dying doesn't mean I get a free
Absolutely.
pass to Christopher House.
Yes.
Okay, okay. And let's, again, I'm a little bit slow. It's a little early this morning. I've had some coffee. The need for Christopher House is, again, they are not in an environment that is going to be conducive to
Correct.
their long-term, and there's some crisis going on.
Right. So an example of that, if you're home taking care of your wife and she's having a pain crisis, you've given the medication that they've instructed you to, you've done everything that you need to do, you're not sleeping, the patient is potentially having a risk of falling, things
Right.
like that. That patient is now in a crisis and the medication they have at home isn't working.
Okay,
So then after some interventions by the team on the home, that's not working, they come to us.
okay. And you can do different things.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Now, you mentioned something right before we went on camera about euthanasia, and people think that people go there and you're going to kill them off.
Yeah.
Whatever. First, we don't have euthanasia in Texas. Some states do, some countries do. We don't.
Right.
How does that, the dying process work then?
Yeah, so we do a lot of education. Probably 65% of what we do is educating patients and families.
65%?
Probably 65%.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
And it's because a lot of times families come in and they have to weigh the risk versus the benefit. Do I want them awake and talking to me and thriving in pain? Or do I want to see them comfortable and resting and asleep and not talking to me?
Because pain medication is going to reduce their cognitive ability, and it's going to make them sleepy.
Yeah.
And but on the other hand, I don't want somebody. I don't want them in pain.
Right.
So it's really a balance, I
Right.
guess.
Yes.
Huh.
And that's really hard for people.
Sure.
They want to be able to have those lasting conversations. They want to know how their loved one's feeling and what they want to say, which is why it's very important to plan ahead, right?
Okay.
Trying to do that while someone is sick is really hard.
Right.
Because they only have so much energy
Right.
to do so much. So we encourage them to have those conversations, say all the things that are important, and then we do that. I can't tell you how many times I walk up to a room and someone stops me and says, "Don't tell my mom she's dying, she can't handle it."
Mm.
And then I go over to the bed and the patient's like, "Don't tell my children, they're not ready to hear that I'm dying." Right? So I usually do
Wow.
my thing. I pull up a chair, sit in the middle and say, "How did we get here? Tell me what's happening."
Wow.
And I let them tell the story. And it's uncomfortable when they're telling the story,
Sure it
right?
is.
It's
Sure.
not pretty. Death is not pretty for everybody.
No.
But the beautiful thing in that is that we allow those conversations to happen so that they can have a beautiful journey and be able to focus on the love they have for each other and not so much the disease, because we can't do anything about the disease.
Yeah. It's there and
Correct.
it's inexorable.
Absolutely.
Wow. 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 So one of the things I'll point out to our viewers is that you need to have appropriate legal medical documents in place, to a medical power of attorney,
Yes.
so that somebody could make a medical decision for you, could now work with hospice. You need a living will. In Texas, we think the official term is directed to physician, where when things get to the point where it's time to let you go, you can kind of go on your own terms, kind of when you're ready to go. The biggest thing we provide our clients that you need is a standalone HIPAA release. Because HIPAA, as you well know, of course, Keisha, is a health privacy law. If you don't have one and now you're unconscious and you can't give a medical provider permission to talk to your family, they can't talk to your family.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have those 3 core documents: medical power of attorney, living will, and HIPAA release, so that this process can go forward and your death again, or just, maybe again, as you said, perhaps a temporary situation can be handled well, carefully, the way you want it handled, and not get lost in the system.
If you don't mind, I'd like to add to that too.
Feel free to.
A lot of times people don't think about it when they're electing their medical power of attorney. They think their spouse or their children are the best ones to be their medical power of attorney, but they've never had that conversation with them. And when it gets to the point where that person has to make a decision, they don't want to make a decision because they never talked about it.
Isn't that something?
Sometimes it's better to have a friend or a neighbor or somebody you really trust who can have that conversation with you so that they can carry out your wishes at end of life. Because believe it or not, a lot of times the children and the spouse are not the best ones.
Well, and we talk about this too sometimes because fights can break out.
Yes.
Especially,
they have broken out.
Yeah,
before.
they have and will again. And over
Yes.
whether to let mom or dad go, or my brother go, or my spouse go, and it's going to be horrid. And
Yes.
that's the last thing you want. And then people never speak to each other
That's
again
right.
because you killed mom or dad or whatever. I mean, so this is all part of a matrix, is the only word I can think of, that you have the legal, but you have the right people in place, and then you get the right care when you need it. And we, I'll go along with that, we will sometimes have clients who have relatively younger adult children, and
That's
I
right.
want my daughter, my son, which is fine. We certainly do that plenty, but you have to think about maturity levels and, again, conflict and, putting your son or daughter, they're 24, maybe they're 25, maybe they're 30, but the notion that they're going to have to pull the plug on you
Yes.
may be something they just would not be able to do. And that's where, again, a more mature friend or a sibling can come in and do the hard work, but the hard work's got to be done.
Yeah, I tell people fire detectors in your house are important, locks on your doors important, and end of life care planning is important.
Isn't that something? And that's exactly right. You're
Yes.
exactly right. Wow. All right. You've, you know what you're doing. All right. Good. That's I mean, we got to work with people that know what they're doing. And again, we've been associated with Hospice Austin for a long time. In fact, we have a luncheon, I think, coming up that I'll be speaking at, and on some giving options for hospice. And if you want to do anything with Hospice Austin, you want to come to the luncheon, I'm sure Rob would be happy. Just call here, Texas Trust Law, and we'll give you the date and time. You can call Hospice Austin, Robin Clements, and she can set you up with that too. But it's a good thing.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to move beyond Christopher House. I'm going to move beyond just this immediate dying and death thing. And I want to talk about Hospice Austin in a bigger setting too. So we've got these counties that we're in charge of. But I know that Hospice Austin does other things that most people would never know about, and one, I think, is grief counseling.
Yes.
Let's talk
Absolutely.
about that. What do y'all do there?
So our grief counseling, once a patient has passed, we offer 13 weeks of counseling to families, free of charge. We also offer grief counseling to the community because we are a community-based hospice. So we offer bereavement support to the community as well.
So somebody who didn't have their loved one in Hospice Austin could still come to a program.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
and that's something that. So the other thing we do here is we take care of families when somebody does die on the
Yes.
legal side, and it's that's the hard work.
Yes.
And people aren't always able to focus well,
Yes.
and it's difficult, and so we do recommend as much as we can that you get bereavement, that's a good term, care, because you just, I mean,
No one teaches you how to let go of your loved one, and no one teaches you how to live without them. The dying part isn't the hard part. It's the learning how to live without them is the hard part.
And that's it. You're right. You're right. And they're not going to call. You can't
right.
call them. And you get home, they're not going to be there. That's it. Their favorite chair is always going to be empty.
Yes.
And no, it's hard. It's hard. So that I really appreciate that. That's
Yes.
a wonderful service. Another thing that I've heard a rumor about that I think I'm going to be right about is that you do a camp for children who've lost parents.
Camp Braveheart is
Camp
the most
Braveheart.
amazing thing we do.
All right, let's talk about Camp Braveheart.
Yeah. So Camp Braveheart happens once a year.
Okay.
We have camp counselors, which are majority staff.
Summer camp?
It's in the summer, and we take them to a campsite. And they spend a week there.
Wow.
And they get to be with other kids who have had a loss. just like they've had. And so
Okay.
there's a lot of connection. And I remember talking with one of the parents who said, after they lost their wife, they really struggled. He struggled with sending his kids away. They hadn't been apart from each other. And then the kids were crying and they were emotional. And then after the camp was over and he picked his kids up and they were happy and elated and shared stories. And then he said, wait, how do I sign up for something like that? So we don't quite have a Camp Braveheart for adults, but it's definitely beneficial for children. And we see the heartwarming stories from the children after they've attended Camp Braveheart.
All right, so let's keep that in mind. And this is something I believe would be open to most children who have lost a parent, and you may know a family situation where, again, a parent of a younger child has died, and can it go up through teenage years too?
I think it's up to 18.
Up to 18. Wonderful resource.
Yes.
What's the cost of Camp Braveheart?
There is no cost. We use the community support to fund Camp Braveheart.
All right, let's go over that again. This is free. I like that word, free.
Yes.
And yeah, what a wonderful thing. Gosh.
Yes.
All right, so that's something else you need to keep in mind about Hospice Austin. Now, there are for-profit hospices, a lot of them.
There are a lot of them.
Doesn't make them bad, doesn't make them evil, but y'all go in this with as pure a heart and without a profit motive. To just take care of the folks that need your care.
One of our CNAs, Shelley, says it best, and I use it all the time when I talk to families, that at Hospice Austin, it doesn't matter if you come from underneath a $100 million bridge or from $1 million house. We get to love on you and care for you and allow you to die with dignity, regardless of your ability to pay. Yeah, not everybody can say that.
Not anybody can say that. Sure, that's a big thing to say. Wow.
Yeah.
So come one, come all.
That's right.
And again, you'll screen them to put them in the right setting or the
Yes.
right situation,
Yes.
so that when they hear the call up yonder, they transition
Absolutely.
as peacefully as possible, and then you leave the family intact. So again, a huge part of estate planning, ladies and gentlemen, is not just getting the money from A to B. It's reducing chances of friction in that family. And there are several points along the way where friction is just there, and if we don't have a structure to minimize it or eliminate it, it's only going to get worse. And a lot of this goes back to what you told me in the 5th grade. You said that to me in the 5th grade. Well, how old are you? 65.
Yes.
You're carrying that back. Yeah, I'm carrying that back because I always wanted to tell you all about that. Blah, blah. Right.
That's true.
It's
That's
so true.
true.
Well,
Hang on to it.
And personal objects. In fact, one of the things we're going to do soon is we're going to have a podcast on how to handle personal property, heirlooms, and things like that, because it's another place people can find, and they fight over stuff
Over stuff.
all the time, and it may be worth. This is my wedding ring, all right. Now I kept losing my real one. This is not my real one. This is a little thing. But somebody may want to fight over this that cost me $25 online. Probably cost them 15 cents to make. I paid 25, but this is my wedding ring now, and I don't want kids fighting about that.
That's right.
So you all are in a unique position of being again, I use the word transition force to help not just the patient, but help the family, get a grip on the fact that their loved one is passing.
Yes.
Second, how to handle those emotions and certainly the patient's emotion. And then third, after they're gone, helping them transition back to, excuse me, a real life without that loved one, because they're never coming back.
That's right. That's right.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot.
But it's a true calling and a blessing, and we're really thankful for the work we get to do.
Well, we're blessed to have you here.
Thank you.
We're very blessed to have you here. All right. Wow. Well, there you go, folks. Hospice Austin, a wonderful thing. And I learned stuff. I knew a little bit. I know a lot more now. And if you have any questions, you can call Hospice Austin. Keisha, I'm sure, be happy to help or get you to the right person who can help with questions, get you some answers. Camp Braveheart, whatever. I mean, that's totally cool. Okay. Well, again, happy vow renewals.
Yeah,
I'm
it's my
sure
25th wedding anniversary.
Oh my gosh! Holy cow! I've been married 35 years this year, and we probably ought to do that too. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. All right, we'll put that on the calendar. March 11th, coming up.
That's
oh
awesome.
gosh! All right. I won't tell my wife just yet. I've got to work on the edges. All right. So we're done with this episode of the Estate of the Union, and it's been a pleasure having Keisha Jones here, Director of Inpatient Services at Hospice Austin. This is Texas Trust Law. We offer complimentary consultations on estate planning, wills, trust, probate, complimentary consultations on, again, helping you do the planning, helping when somebody's passed, making sure things work right. We do try to take a Christian attitude in what we're doing, and we want to always honor God with what we're doing too. So thank you very much for watching, for listening, and we'll be back again soon with another episode of the Estate of the Union.